hope all is well, y'all. Welcome in, welcome in, welcome in. We are here. We are here. Um, hey, Mark, welcome in. Thank you so much for joining. Let me just get my stuff up here. Oh, there's some new buttons. Hey, I don't know how to use them, but I'll have to figure that part out. Hello, everyone. I'm glad we're able to jump on today. Thank you all for your patience with me last week. It was, y'all wouldn't have wanted to see me last week, okay? Last week I had the craziest sinus headache, and it was just, my head felt like a balloon. So I would not have been any use to you guys last week. But I'm glad that we're here today. We already have our topic from last week that we were supposed to talk about, which is breaking people pleasing habits. So I'm glad we're able to jump on. If this is your first time, my name is Debbie. I am a certified mindfulness coach and an emerging therapist or therapist intern. And this channel is all things mindful living. We talk about different topics every week that is voted on by all of the subscribers. And this week was chosen, well, last week it was chosen to talk about people pleasing and how to break people pleasing habits. So, if this is something that is something you want to know more about, stick around. Make sure to like the live, share the live with anyone that you think can benefit from it. And if you haven't subscribed, why not? Please do. Okay. Because we talk about all of the things, and you definitely get a say on the things that we get to talk about. So, I'm excited to jump in tonight. If you're watching, make sure to drop in the comments where you're watching from. I see Mark is watching from Belize City, so thank you so much for joining. And if people pleasing is something that you actually feel like you're struggling with, just drop that in the comments as well. But we'll dive in, y'all, because y'all know Debbie likes a good definition. So we're going to start there. We're going to define what people pleasing is. We'll talk about what it's not. And then we'll talk about some steps that you can take to begin to break the habit. It's definitely a habit. It's not something that you're going to be able to just fix tomorrow, especially if it's something that you commonly do. And you'll learn from this live too, like what that may look like and why that may be. And then I will leave us at the end with a few journaling questions that you can take away just to kind of continue to think about this and how this shows up in your life. And then give you some action items that you may be able to take. So I hope this is helpful. We'll probably be about 30, 40 minutes, give or take. And let's dive in, y'all. Let's dive in. Let's see here. Okay, so like I said, I like to start with a good definition. So let's start there. What is people pleasing, right? What exactly is it? So, people pleasing is an interpersonal and emotional need to satisfy others, often at your own expense. It's a distinct pattern between characterized it's a distinct pattern characterized by prioritizing others' needs, desires, and emotions over one's own, driven by a strong need for approval, fear of rejection, or avoidance of conflict, often resulting in self neglect, emotional distress, and difficulty setting boundaries. Okay, that was a mouthful. I'm gonna go back through it. But people pleasing is an interpersonal and emotional need to satisfy others, often at your own expense, right? So, often at your own expense is very crucial or critical when it comes to people pleasing, right? But there is an element of sacrifice, right, that we do for others that these things have to happen, like being a parent. Sometimes you're sacrificing yourself in certain situations. That's not necessarily what this is. This is taking it even a step further, right? And then further, it says it's a distinct pattern characterized by prioritizing others' needs, desires, and emotions over one's own, driven by a strong need for approval, fear of rejection, or avoidance of conflict, often resulting in self neglect, emotional distress, and difficulty setting boundaries. I'll even add to with the self neglect, there's a level of like shame and guilt that happens with people pleasing too, that is associated with self worth. And a matter of trying to navigate and balance all of that is where people pleasing comes from. People pleasing is a defense mechanism oftentimes, and then it also is just a response to trauma and stress. Um, so it's not necessarily something that you're, and this is going to be the next thing. It's not necessarily something that's a conscious choice. It's oftentimes something that you do automatically without thinking, because it's something that you're used to, and it's something that you may have done in the past over time, or something that you've learned in the past over time to do in order to feel safe, or in order to feel some level of acceptance or a level of survival. It just really kind of depends. But if this is something that you guys are experiencing, let me know in the comments. Drop, let me know, or just drop a heart in the comments and let me know there that way as well. Okay, so what is it not, right? What is people pleasing not? Ah, yeah, definitely. Definitely a need for validation. Sometimes people use people pleasing as a way for validation. This is a live. We're talking about people pleasing and how to break people pleasing habits. Thank you for joining us. Jesus is King. Okay, so what is it not? When we're thinking about people pleasing, we may have some misconceptions. So, what is it not? Like I said, not always a conscious choice. Oftentimes, it's compulsive, right? Oftentimes, it just happens just out of your natural reactions. Okay. Number two, it's not necessarily always kindness. And that might be hard to hear, but people pleasing is not always kindness. It's also often rooted in fear, right? Fear of being rejected, fear of being misunderstood, a fear of not feeling or being enough for the people that are around you. And real kindness doesn't require for you to abandon yourself. It's just something that you do out of the kindness of your heart. So at any point in time, if you feel like there's fear within your motivation, or there's a fear of not being misunderstood, or just fear of not being enough. If you feel like fear is rooted in the reason why you're doing these things, then it's most likely going to be linked to people pleasing, right? Um, so when it comes to what else it is not, it is not love, right? Sometimes we may think that people pleasing is a form of love, but that may not necessarily be the case, because love includes truth, respect, and boundaries. People pleasing often involves self abandonment to keep someone else more comfortable. So, in that, we may feel or think that we are loving on that person, or being loving. Hi, June, welcome in. Or being loving, when ultimately it's a matter of self abandonment. And love is twofold, it goes both ways. This is also how a lot of people end up in one sided relationships, where they feel like they're giving, 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 but nothing is coming back in return. So yeah, so it's not love. It's not a healthy compromise. Oftentimes we people please because we feel like we're compromising, but compromise is a balance. There is a balance between both people having to adjust, both people receiving some form of benefit, or both people having a sense of peace about whatever's happening, right? People pleasing is when only one person is consistently adjusting over and over and over and over again to another person's situation, life, or even just within an environment. Okay. So it's not a healthy compromise. It often is going to be one sided. And then it's not your personality. A lot of times we take, oh, I'm just nice, or I'm just kind, and that's just who I am as a person. When we take that on as personality and identity, and it creates a sense of falsehood as far as like who we are as a person. People pleasing is a learned behavior. Okay, it's a learned behavior from our own stressors and from our own impulses, from our own fears, right? And because it's a learned behavior, it's not necessarily who you are as a person. It's something that you have conditioned yourself to be in order to be accepted, to be liked, to be validated, right? So it's linking it to personality can be detrimental to the person or to the individual. Okay. Um, and okay. So when it comes to those are what people pleasing is not. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything here. People pleasing is a learned behavior, not who you are at your core. It can be unlearned. Okay, perfect. All right, so how do we begin to start the process of breaking a people pleasing habit? Like, what does that look like, right? Well, it starts with naming what people pleasing looks like for you. People pleasing for me may look totally different than people pleasing for another person. So it starts with identifying what's actually happening and being very intentional with that identification. So, um, some examples of what people pleasing can look like: saying yes when your body or you're having like a visceral response to say no. Over explaining simple decisions when it's like, okay, I'm not going to go to this party, or I'm not going to do these small decisions that you have to make, and you feel the need to over explain those decisions. Okay. Over committing to people and situations. All right. Over giving when it comes to your time, your energy, and your support, your money. Right. Especially when you're without being asked. Right. That's a big crucial piece. It's one thing if someone's asking you to do something, but when you're doing it and people don't even have to ask you to do it, that's a huge indicator of people pleasing. A huge, immense fear of disappointing others, right? Granted, we all have some level of wanting to show up for people, wanting to support people, wanting to be in the lives of people, want to love on people and care for people. That's one thing. But if there is an immense fear, if there's a huge fear of disappointing others to where it drives you in a certain way and it motivates you to act and react a certain way to people, that's where it may be people pleasing. Okay. Um, Apologizing unnecessarily, right? Consistently apologizing, even when it doesn't warrant an apology, right? And this is something that has come up for me. Like, I often do apologize for things when I don't have to. Even when I'm out in public, I'll, accidentally walk in front of someone, or maybe it's just a matter of you trying to maneuver around people and you feel so obliged to apologize profusely, right? So apologizing unnecessarily, feeling responsible or heavy guilt for other people's emotions or behaviors, right? Taking on the responsibility of other people's emotions and behaviors. Losing yourself in relationships or work, right? Feeling like you're losing a sense of your identity, like you're not able to be yourself in those spaces, and not being able to be yourself on a consistent basis. That's often people pleasing. You're masking yourself for some reason. Um, Avoiding hard conversations or situations to keep the peace. That's a big one. I just want to keep the peace. I don't want to cause any conflict or any issues or whatever. So you either silence yourself, you avoid hard conversations, or avoid certain situations. Um, and if there is a conflict that arises, you automatically just, all right, I'm going to just do whatever keeps the peace, which can be, of course, helpful in some spaces, but then in a lot of spaces, it builds up a high level of resentment internally, and then people kind of blow up in other areas of their lives because they're not able to showcase or really show what it is that they need or what they want or what they desire in other spaces. So, avoiding hard conversations and situations. Some other subtle behaviors you may notice when it comes to people pleasing is laughing at things that aren't funny to keep things comfortable, or just laughing in general because laughing in general just makes things less uncomfortable. Agreeing in the moment, then regretting it later. And this is a chronic thing. So, not saying that that there aren't going to be times where you may agree to something and you may not regret it later. Not necessarily the case. There are some times where that happens, but if becomes chronic, where you're often agreeing to things in the moment and then regretting it later, that can be an indicator of people pleasing. Some other subtle behaviors: checking how others feel before deciding how you feel, right? It's one thing to check on others on how they feel to make decisions on things with them or for that person. It's another thing to rely on other people's feelings to determine how you feel about something, right? Um, Changing your opinion depending on who you're around is another indicator, or saying things are fine when it's really not, and that's something that's chronic, right? Something that you do obsessively. All right. So we talked about a few. These are not the only ways that people pleasing shows up, but these are the ones that um, are often often happen, often used, and a lot of times not noticed right away. Okay, so that was number one: naming what people pleasing looks like. All right. And let me know in the comments if these are some things that you're experiencing, or if there's any others that you're not quite sure about that you would like to mention as well. Let me see here. Okay, so when it comes to number two, that was number one: naming what people pleasing looks like. Number two, where it comes from, right? How did it become normalized? How did it start? Where did it initiate, and why does it happen? Okay? Because there's so many different layers as to why. There's so many different layers as to where it may have came from. But starting to think about that is, I would say, not necessarily critical, but it's a good place to start, because of the fact that you want to see where the conditioning began. If it's a particular person that started it in your life, if it was just a series of people or situations, it could be either or. But really start to think about where it comes from, right? It could be from childhood conditioning, right? Whether it be with your parents or siblings or just childhood interactions. A continued desire for safety or acceptance, to avoid conflict or abandonment, right? It could be to avoid conflict because you're fearful of being abandoned. Whether it be you had a childhood of abandonment or rejection, or very validation seeking, right? So to avoid conflict or abandonment is a big one. Cultural or family expectations, where you may have grown up in a space where you are expected to be a certain way. And even though that way may not be who you are at your core, you feel the need to be that way. So, in order to, please the people around you, you have to act a certain way, right? So, cultural and family expectations, work environments, and the reward that you receive and overgiving when it comes to your work environment. So oftentimes we people please in work environments because we find success in that, right? We get promotions, we get more responsibility, we get higher, pay, we get, opportunities and things of that matter, right? So understanding how, not just how it has caused harm, but also how it has caused some good, right? There are some elements of people pleasing that has gotten us some rewarding outcomes, right? Like I said, either at work, when it comes to relationships, um, even though it may have burned you out over time, it could have bring some sense of reward to where you feel no need to change or alter how you show up in those spaces. But I would say people pleasing is definitely feels like it's a problem solve in work environments, because it does give you some form, at times, some form of a reward, even at your own expense. And then the last one here, I have fear of rejection or fear of conflict, which we've talked about a few times here at this point. Let me make sure that there are. Oh, okay. So when thinking about where it comes from, you also want to think about the things that you may say to yourself. That will start giving you some indication of where it may come from. So when it comes to your people pleasing habits, what are the thoughts that run through your mind? Here's some examples. I don't want them to be upset with me. It's not that big of a deal. I'll just do it or just get it done. I don't want to come off as rude or mean, right? Let me just handle it, right? Let me just handle it. If I just handle it, it'll just be done, right? And then what if they don't like me after this, right? Some of these questions or things that we may replay over and over in our minds that get us to act in a certain way, okay? Um, so just keep that in mind. MD lover, I am well. How are you? Trippy, I don't know if this is one of my children or not, but if it is, hello. I don't know that that name. Okay, so that was number two. Where it comes from, normalize it. Normalize it. Let's see here. Okay, so number one was naming what people pleasing looks like for you specifically. Number two is um, understanding where it comes from. Where did you normalize it? Where did that come from? Okay. And then number three, what are the costs? Okay. What is this actually costing you? By taking these actions and behaviors, what does that do for you and how does that harm you? Okay. And getting a good understanding of that. The cost could be emotional exhaustion. You just feel tired all day, every day. There is no end to your tiredness. And it's emotionally tired, but it's just a matter of just continued exhaustion. Okay. Another cost is resentment that builds. Oftentimes, when it comes to people pleasing, you internalize all of the real, true core emotions that you are experiencing surrounding whatever relationship or person or whatever. And that resentment begins to build, and it begins to build quietly to a point where you may blow up in other areas or just blow up in general, right? Or you may have these huge meltdowns or breakdowns, whether it be emotional breakdowns and or just outbursts or anger fits. There could be could look in so many different ways, but resentment begins to build to where it just kind of explodes or implodes in other spaces. A feeling of loss of identity, not really knowing who you are, feeling like you can't or aren't yourself. Again, burnout. You become disconnected from your body. There's that feeling of, I'm just here. I don't really have a sense of whether I'm going this way or that way, kind of autopilot in a way, where there's just disconnection from people, disconnection from yourself. Um, and that could be even the beginning of depression, right? Or I would say a major depressive episode if you feel that disconnected. Um, Another way that it could show up as a cost is you attract one-sided relationships. I said that earlier in the call, where you all of your relationships, when you really sit back and you look back and see like what your relationships look like, all of them or many of them are one-sided, right? If there's a certain extent of where people, if you were to just stop reaching out to people, or if you were to just stop going around certain people, how long would it be until they notice, right? And not to say that you're not memorable or anything like that. It's just a matter of who's putting the effort into the relationship or the friendship or or even just with family, like who's putting in that effort. And if it's mutual, then you know that, okay, this is something that is reciprocal, right? I'm getting something back and I'm giving. But if you stop the outreach and you stop the text messages or the phone calls, even if it's just for a week, what would that communication or interaction look like, right? So understanding when you're attracting one-sided relationships, delayed or ignored needs and boundaries, right? When you're consistently feeling ignored, okay, or you're consistently feeling like your um, your well-being is on the back burner, or things are delayed, or the things that you need or the support that you need is delayed, right? Um, that's a big indicator. Increased anxiety and overthinking. You're getting to a state where you're having a hard time with um, understanding the people around you and feeling an immense level of anxiety surrounding your relationships and even just situations, and feeling the need to overthink or overplan or overdo all of the things in order to operate in those spaces. That's exhausting. That's how you get back to emotional exhaustion, to burnout, to resentment. A lot of times it comes from the increased anxiety and overthinking that happens when it comes to people pleasing. Because when you people please, you're wanting it to have a certain result. And when you don't have that result, it creates anxiety and overthinking of, can I do more? Where can I do more? What can I do to make this better? Or where can I find or receive that validation? Um, so increased anxiety and overthinking is often how the cost of people pleasing begins. Um, and then when it comes to, I think I have like two more here. Your yes loses meaning. Okay, this is a big one. Your yes begins to lose meaning because now your yes is expected versus it being desired or wanted, right? And when your yes turns into expectation versus desire when it comes to relationships, friendships, or whatever, that can cause, again, burnout, resentment, emotional exhaustion. It begins to spiral into other things because now you're in a one sided relationship to an extent, and your yes is expected. And when no comes, that just is the end of the world. Like, no, like this, you never say no, right? So your yes loses meaning in that relationship. And then it blocks authentic connection. You're not yourself when you're people pleasing. You're not able to be your authentic self when you're people pleasing. And because of that, it minimizes your ability to authentically connect with people, right? So understanding that, hello, how are you? Understanding that the more that you people please, the less you are yourself, the less that you're operating in your own identity. Okay. All right. Number 4, when it comes to how you're able to break people pleasing habits, it's noticing small steps you can take in breaking the habit. So now that you have taken the time to name what people pleasing looks like for you, you've taken the time to understand where it comes from, how it became normalized in your life. You've taken the time to also understand the thought patterns and the things that pop up in your mind when you people please. You now have weighed the cost of what is actually happening in your life and a result of your people pleasing. Now you can take even just a small step in breaking the habit. What does that small step look like for you? Okay. Um, some practical ideas: pausing before answering yes, not being quick to say yes, right? Really taking the time to weigh the cost of your yes and putting more meaning to or putting that meaning back to your yes. Um, am I overcommitting myself? Am I overcommitting my time, my energy, right? Is this something that I want to do, or is it something that I feel like I have to do? Now, granted, we live a life with obligations and there's a lot of things that we have to do, but a lot of times we take on responsibility for things that were never our responsibility in the first place. So pausing before answering yes, even if it's you giving yourself a boundary of, okay, before I say yes to anything, I'm going to wait this period of time. I'm going to wait, 3 seconds, 5 seconds before my yes. I'm going to make sure that I reflect on it for 10 minutes before I say yes. Sometimes our yeses have to be quick, right? So especially when we're in workspaces where we have to make fast and quick decisions, so we may not have 10 minutes. So what does that look like? Do I pause for 3 to 5 seconds before I give my answer? Do I give my answers in writing versus me giving it over a phone call? Is it a matter of me saying like, okay, great, this is something I may be able to help with. Give me some time to look at my calendar, or give me some time to think, review what other tasks I have to get done that day. There's so many different ways that you can navigate that to where you're not giving all immediate yeses, right? um, Practicing short responses like, let me get back to you, right? Let me think about it and get back to you. I may not be available for that. Let me double check my schedule. That doesn't work for me. I don't have the capacity at this time. I can't commit to that right now. So practicing what that actually sounds like, so that way when it comes down to you actually having to say no or say yes, you have some verbiage that you can use, right? One of my favorites is, I may not have capacity for that. Let me double check to look at my task, and let me double check to see what I have going on, and then I can let you know, right? Um, that may not be something I can commit to right now, right? That's another one I like to use. I also like to respond to things in writing a lot of the time, because in that way that gives me time to really think about it, and then it also, I may have to write it out or type it out, and as I'm typing it out, I'm like, you know what, actually this doesn't make sense for me. Let me change my response from yes to no, or my no to yes. It just kind of depends. But giving yourself space for decisions, especially when it involves other people. So that way you can go based off of what your needs are and what your limitations are, versus you just trying to please the person or please the situation. Okay? You're not Superman, you're not Superwoman. Stop trying. Okay? You don't get no gold sticker. You don't get no smiley face sticker for doing the things that you're doing. Nobody's going to come pat you on the back. All right? They may. Okay, I'm not going to say that, but they may. But like, just understand that you have limitations, you have capacity, you have a cup that needs to be filled and poured into and poured out of. And if your cup is already empty, you saying yes to something is not going to be beneficial for you or the other party, because you're on E, right? There's nothing left. Um, okay. And let's see here. Hi, Mark. Yes, it is so tempting to make room because someone or some group needs you. Yeah. And there's going to be, the thing about it is that someone's always going to need you, right? To some extent. There's always going to be some need that someone has. And it's about determining what is your responsibility and what is not, what your capacity is and what your limitations are and what is not, and being able to make judgment calls based off of that versus the sole factor of someone needing you. There's always going to be a need, right? Always. There's never going to be someone that's not going to need something. And it's a matter of just knowing and understanding that, and being able to navigate it with providing support when people need you. But that support doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do a whole bunch of things. It could have just been advice. It could be a listening ear. It could be making a suggestion for a resource. Doesn't necessarily mean that you have to actually take heavy action. Okay? So just keep that in mind. Where was I at? Yes, practicing short responses. So yes, I had that there. Tolerating discomfort without fixing it. A lot of times people pleasing is happens because we're uncomfortable. And because we're uncomfortable and there's a lot of discomfort, we people please to alleviate or relieve the discomfort. I've said this before. Sometimes we have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so tolerating this discomfort of I need to fix this or I need to try to fix this, and sitting in that and allowing yourself to sit in that discomfort, the more that you're able to do that, the more open you will be to it. And then that way, the more you'll be willing to set a boundary, right? I said this before. I feel, and I said this in a session with a client earlier today, is that boundaries are to keep people in your life. They're not to remove people from your life. Restrictions are what remove people, but boundaries are really for you to be able to take care of your own personal behaviors and actions, and restrictions are trying to put restrictions on other people's actions and behaviors. So boundaries is really for you to be cognizant of your own actions and behaviors, right? It's to keep people in your life based upon the fact that this is a way for me to provide balance. It's a way for me to provide peace for myself so that way other people can be in my life, right? So setting boundaries is important. And oftentimes it's hard to do these big, huge boundaries. So starting with setting one little small boundary for yourself is a start, right? So we said pausing before answering yes, practicing short responses, tolerating discomfort, setting one small boundary. Next, not over explaining your decisions. Okay? Make a decision, make it plain, and that's it, right? You may not, some you may have to explain, whether it be something for work or whatever, but making a decision and not obliging to the need to over explain why you made that decision. All right. And then again, I think I said this already, but noticing what's your responsibility and what is not. Okay. Oftentimes, people pleasing happens because we're taking on the responsibility of other people, whether it be taking on their behaviors, their actions, their guilt, their shame, their feelings and emotions, or even their responsibilities or their the things that they're accountable for. So or need to be accountable for. So noticing what's your responsibility and what's not. Um, yeah, and we talked about ways that you can do that as far as different ways you can talk about. Yeah, let me think about it. Get back to you. I'm not available for that. We talked about that. Um, Oftentimes, just in noticing too about people pleasing, if it requires a whole paragraph or dissertation for you to explain why you're doing something a certain way, that's typically people pleasing. If you feel like you have to over explain in that way. Okay? So, a few things that you can take away as far as questions you can ask yourself to explore people pleasing for how it shows up for you. Feel free to write these down. But the first question is, what am I afraid will happen if I say no? Again, like I said, people pleasing is rooted in, it's typically rooted in fear, some form of fear somewhere. What am I afraid will happen if I say no? Another one, who benefits when I abandon myself? Who benefits, oop, my bad, y'all. Who benefits when I abandon myself? Another question, is this a request or an expectation I never agreed to? So you have to understand sometimes with people pleasing, and sometimes the way people manipulate situations too, is that they don't necessarily ask, they insinuate. And they say, oh, I need, I was doing this the other day and I need this to happen. And then they pause and they look and they're like, and they're waiting for you to insert yourself, right? So, is this a request, an actual request, or an expectation I never agreed to? Is this something someone is just insinuating I do or insinuating I help with versus them actually asking you? Because if they didn't ask, then it's not even, you don't even have to, you don't necessarily need to address it. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. A lot, but oftentimes we volunteer ourselves for things because someone insinuated something versus them actually making a request asking for our help or our support, and that was never necessarily the case, right? Um, Another question: do you feel guilt or fear when you set boundaries? When you're actually setting these small boundaries, what's happening? What's happening in your mind? What's happening with your emotions? What's happening in your body? Because again, like I've mentioned this before, your body also responds to a lot of the things that when it comes to your emotions and the things that are happening. And sometimes we fall into people pleasing because our body has an actual response to our boundary setting. Okay. Hi Tina, welcome in. So do you feel guilt or fear when you set boundaries? Who taught you directly or indirectly that your needs come second? Who taught you directly or indirectly that your needs come second? Okay, I'll say that again. Who taught you directly or indirectly that your needs come second? That was conditioned somewhere. Now, granted, like I said before, there is an element of sacrifice that happens in relationships, whether it be even with friendships, even when it comes to our children, our spouses. There is a level of compromise that has to happen. There is a level of sacrifice that happens in those types of relationships. That's a form of love, right? There's a difference when it's rooted in fear. That's where people pleasing comes from. So I don't want to dismiss um, the element of relationships where sacrifice is there. Um, but there is some sense of people pleasing to where it becomes so chronic that it becomes detrimental to your daily life, right? It becomes a chronic impact to your anxiety and your overthinking and depression and burnout and exhaustion emotionally. So, this is again on a chronic level, but you want to, if that's the case, you want to explore that. You want to see where that came from. And then towards the end, you want to take some small action, right? So, what is one situation this week where I can respond differently? Okay. What is one situation this week where I can respond differently? If there's any space in your life that you find that you have been people pleasing, right? Pick one spot. Doesn't have to be, oh, I'm cutting everybody off. I ain't say that, y'all. I did not say that. But pick one situation this week where you can respond differently. It could be just saying no and no giving no explanation. It could be just going into situations and being yourself versus trying to put on a mask or show up in a way, right? So maybe think about how you could do that. Another question you can ask there when it comes to action is, what support do I need to stay consistent in this shift? Is there an accountability partner that you could, say, hey, like this is something I'm working on. I need you to hold me accountable, right? So keeping that in mind, let me make sure I'm not missing anything, y'all. I think that's it. Oh, well, one thing, as we're thinking about people pleasing, one thing you want to remember is that when you stop people pleasing, some people will be confused. Some people ain't gonna like it. Some people gonna be uncomfortable. Some people are gonna be like, well, what's wrong with you? Right? Um, People are used to your yes and may resist your no. That's okay. All right. You might feel guilt even when you did nothing wrong. It's okay. It's going to happen. Right. You may question yourself. So expect to be uncomfortable. Expect to be having some level of discomfort. Expect for people not to like it. Right. Um, and if you want to be, I wouldn't even say you need to explain, because that's a part of the people pleasing, right? You may feel the need to explain, like, oh, like I'm working on this thing, I'm working. Yeah, no, it's just no, no, no. Just practice saying no. Maybe that's one thing you can do. Just say no, no. Say it in different languages. Say it in different ways. Say it with different voices. Whatever you need to say it in, but just practice. Um, and how you want to say no. What you want it to sound like? If is it just no? Because no is a sentence and it has a period on the end. But if that's too difficult, pace yourself, right? Not at this time. Mm-hmm. There's so many different ways that you can say it, right? So practice if you need to. Expect it to be uncomfortable. Expect others to be uncomfortable. Expect for others to maybe not like it. Um, but this is just a way to slowly but surely begin to break the habit. I hope this is helpful, y'all. Let me make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Uh, yeah, I hope this is helpful. I don't think I forgot anything. But number one, and way to breaking a habit is naming what people pleasing looks like. Number two, knowing and understanding where it comes from. Where did you normalize it? Number three, what are the costs? Weighing the costs, right? How is it showing? How is it costing you in your life? And then number four, what small steps you can take in breaking the habit and figuring that out based off of what you find and what you explore. I hope that the journaling questions are helpful to get you started and where to go. But if you need to add to it, feel free. And then lastly, be okay with the discomfort. Discomfort doesn't mean you're doing something wrong, right? It just means that you're doing something new. It's going from something being very familiar to being unfamiliar. And that transition is going to be uncomfortable at times. So be okay with the discomfort. Expect the discomfort, not just on your side, but on the side of other people that you're trying to set these boundaries with. And be encouraged in that. Again, I hope that all is well. If this is your first time, again, my name is Debbie. I am a certified mindfulness coach and emerging therapist, a therapist intern. And this channel is all about mindful living. We do this live every Monday at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. May's about to be rough, okay? I'm going to tell y'all this right now because my son is graduating from high school, and that's in May. We got Mother's Day, and I have a heavy conference that's happening this weekend for schools. So we'll probably do next Monday. I'm going to skip because of the conference. Um, so y'all won't see me next Monday. I'm just gonna be real honest. Um, it's literally a how many days is it? It's a 3 day, 3.5 day conference where I'll be sitting in a room with a bunch of other therapist interns doing group therapy for 8 hours straight. Okay? Y'all ain't gonna see me next Monday. Y'all not gonna see me. We tired. Okay? We gonna be tired. So I wanna say, let me just look at the calendar really quick. I should have looked at this before I came live. But hey, here we are. And let's see. Why is my calendar not coming up? Oh, here it goes. All right. So, okay. Yeah, you're not going to see me on the 4th. I'll be here for the 11th. That's the day after Mother's Day. Yeah, I'll be here for the 11th. And y'all not going to see me on the 18th. And then I'll be here for the 25th. Right? Yeah. Okay. All right. So it looks like it's going to be a every other Monday situation in May. So the 11th and the 25th. Yeah, because the weekend of the 16th for my son's graduation and got family coming to town. It's about to be a lot. All right. Debbie's about to be overwhelmed. All right. So, to eliminate my overwhelm, okay, we're going to do a every other Monday situation this month. And I'll make sure to post the video lives ahead of time so that way y'all know. And then we'll probably do a vote for the next topics this weekend. Don't let me lie to y'all. Next weekend. I'll post that next Friday or next Saturday. Okay. So that's the plan, y'all. I hope that y'all have a great rest of your evening. Again, y'all won't see me next week, next Monday, but you will see me the Monday after. Y'all have a blessed night, and I'll see y'all all soon. Bye.